Good afternoon and welcome to today's Bravo Leadership Conversation. My name is Maria Lourdes Terán, and I'm Vice President at the Council of the Americas offices in Miami. Today, we are honored to host Gaston Bottazzini, CEO at Falabella, and Jorge Becerra, Emeritus Senior Partner and Senior Advisor at BCG, for what will be a very inspiring conversation covering the most important issues facing the Latin American business community in today's environment. At the Council of the Americas, we are proud to provide a space for leaders to engage in forward-thinking and inspiring discussions in growth and development in Latin America. Today's speakers represent the great talent, knowledge, and expertise that the region holds, and we can't wait to hear their thoughts and perspectives. I want to thank the sponsors of our year-long Bravo Leadership Series: Bank of America, the Jeffrey Group, the AES Corporation, Mambu Latin America, Pfizer, Grupo Mariposa Apex, Chubb Latin America, Greenberg Touareg, MasterCard, Salesforce, Softec, and Medtronic, as well as our media partners, America's Quarterly and CNN en Español. With that, Jorge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria Lourdes. And I guess we all share your excitement regarding the opportunity of being here today. After this many meetings and months where we were trying to be only live. So thank you for that. And thank you, Gaston, as a good friend. Gaston is a good friend. And before it was a competitor.
That was a long time ago.
That's right. We developed a very sort of close relationship. We thought that getting your experience after these years of the pandemic in leading this very remarkable group in Latin America would be able to share those experiences with all this audience. So thank you for that. As you know, Gaston, it's also Argentinian born, and he has this dual perspectives from the undergrad from the West Coast in University of California, and then his MBA at HBS. And that says something about you in getting this dual perspectives on how the world it's evolving. And then he joined Falavela in 2008. And soon you will be in 4 years, I think, 4 years mark of your leadership at the full group. You joined first the financial arm. That obviously gave you a good perspective of how the group was working, but mainly how the financial side was providing such a support embedded into the full group. And I guess today the idea, we have been in so many conversations regarding what we have learned during this 2 years of really rebuilding our paradigms, that we thought we would be relying more on your more colorful stories. I think there are some common themes that we want to discuss and get your perspectives, but somehow being able to express them through real stories that you have lived at Falabella that could be of value to share with this group. Right. And I guess one of the elements that we thought was how the organizations have been evolving in their both business and organizational model, and then how some of those key changes have been evolving. But before going into that, maybe you want to give a quick update on how Falabella current strategy has been recognizing some of these changes, and then we'll move into what produces those changes.
Right. So first of all, Jorge, Maria Lourdes, thank you for the invitation to be here with you. Thank you to the Council of the Americas. It's really an honor. So to your question about, starting with maybe a brief update, and even for some of the people in the audience, what Falabella is doing. We really, over many years, Falabella is a 120-year-old, going to 130-year-old company. And over many years, what we built, we always thought of as an ecosystem in the physical world, where we operate malls, we operate stores, we operate financial services, and we extract synergies from all of these businesses, not just working in isolation, but working together, where the malls provide great space for our stores. The stores are great anchors for the malls, and therefore the malls then have an initial offering that is very attractive for the rest of the tenants in that mall. and the financial services translate a transactional relationship in the stores into a, call it subscription model type of relation, more of an ongoing relationship that builds loyalty over time. So all of this ecosystem works actually very well in the physical world. And what we're trying to do is build a new ecosystem, one that complements what we have built in the physical world with another one that operates in the digital world. Mm-hmm. And in the digital world, what we want to do is obviously go through the transformation every company is going of making our financial services company a digital bank, making our retailers an e-commerce platform, and making our malls also a digital enabled community for the customers. But customers are demanding a broader set of services beyond that, which provide a challenge and an opportunity as well. So we are transforming these businesses, but at the same time, building new businesses. So the first set of businesses, how these that we already have become platforms. So for example, in the physical world, we have a bunch of formats, home improvement, grocery, department stores. But in the digital world, you don't really need those formats. So we are trying to build a common e-commerce platform for all our formats. So it's a single destination. We already implemented that in Chile. We're going to implement that single destination for all of our brands, be it retail brands or meaning retail format brands or private label brands. And then complement that with another platform, which is our marketplace platform, which basically consists in inviting all retailers or sellers to participate in this and complement our core offering with the offering that the whole market has to bring to the table. And that is a big challenge in the sense of putting all of this together in a single destination. The third platform we're trying to build is a financial services platform. We went from really operating in stores to today operating mostly digitally in our financial services. Today, more than 50% of our credit card openings, for example, are done 100% digital without any intervention or need for going through a physical activation of the product, which means you activate it directly in our e-commerce platforms or wherever you want to make a purchase. But then complementing that with a digital payments platform. And we launched our payments platform in Chile, in Peru, approximately in Colombia, and so forth. And finally, we have a platform that actually acts as a unifying role, which is our loyalty program. And that is also becoming not only a digital platform, but also an open platform. And we went from, just to give an example of how that has evolved, from 6 million customers participating in that program about a year and a half ago to 16 million customers participating there today, which gives us an incredible visibility of what those customers are doing versus what we had before, and brings a set of other opportunities and opportunities to really adapt our value proposition and complement our value proposition to serve those customers. And finally, we have always thought about our logistics as something to serve our stores. And now all of a sudden, the logistics platform is not just something that has to serve our stores, but a platform to serve our customers in a different way, and a platform that needs to be open to sellers. And obviously, what we had built over time is not enough to do that. So that's another front in which we are working to improve the service, leveraging our stores, but also our systems to get to customers' homes as fast as possible.
Thank you. And it feels, somehow overwhelming, not only the 120, 130 years, but somehow the depth and breadth of all these changes that you are describing. And somebody would say many of these changes are somehow reflected in many of the new companies of this new economy, the attackers, but being somehow an incumbent that really has the vision of transforming the way of doing things, somebody would say how to do it. And obviously there have been many ideas and concepts like agility and agile organizations, how the process of transforming the way in which the organization has been working has happened, and any either learnings of that process, while organization has been traditionally more focused on vertical somehow mindsets and shapes. And now from your saying, it's much more platforms or horizontal perspectives on how to integrate that, how to do that in such a large organization.
Yeah, so Jorge, I think when I described all of these initiatives, you said it seems overwhelming, and it actually is overwhelming if you think about it in the traditional way.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing is that the digital competitors are doing many of these things in parallel. They are being able to really take on many different initiatives in parallel. And initially, for us, it was quite a struggle. I think it continues to be a struggle. So the process of moving to from, as you described, a traditional or vertically structured organization to a more horizontal and agile organization is a learning process. I think we started this learning process by just working on customer journeys, improving those journeys, setting up these cells. And I think most companies have gone through or are going through this process. But soon we learned that the goal or the ability to meet the goals that we had as a business was not going to be enabled just by that. What it takes is to really convert the whole organization to this type of way of working. And therefore, the process in which we are right now is, number one, is no longer defining our businesses in the way they have traditionally been defined vertically, but defining them more as platforms. And therefore, once you start defining them as platforms, it means that these platforms need to be built in a way that they can interconnect, in a way that the teams that are working on each of these initiatives can have autonomy to work at their own pace and not depend on the rest of the organization and the bureaucracy of the organization to be able to make progress, but at the same time do it in a way that doesn't diverge over time, right? That as you build these different components, you are able to connect them, they are able to communicate, and therefore you're able to leverage the power of the whole ecosystem. And that's a very difficult balance to make. I think we're in a learning process to do that. But I think we are more and more getting to the Falabella way of doing this, because what I found as well is that we read a lot of books, brought in a lot of consultants that helped us a lot. But at the end of the day, each company has to find their way in which this fits with the texture of the company or the culture of the company.
And in that regard, if we remember when the concept of multi-Latina somehow emerged in the 90s, and Chilean companies were probably the first good examples in moving into beyond their local market. And Falavela was one of those, going to Argentina and some of the other related markets. But now that you have moved more truly like a pan-regional organization going to Brazil and Mexico, but you would go beyond and say how we structure our, let's say, center of excellence or key functions with a global perspective. And I think it has been known that you decided to hire even the CIO based in India. And despite of having the platform and factories for development there, you are also moving into getting talent from other countries that you normally would not be looking like a hub of talent, like Argentina. How these multi-dimensions for in terms of languages, time zones, functions that are more in a decentralized way are working, and any either pitfalls or learnings that you are getting from that?
So I think the original way in which we thought, at least about ourselves as a multi-Latina, is a Chilean company or a Chilean-based company that goes into other Latin American countries. And we defined our scope as all of Latin America and progressively went into different countries, but we didn't think of ourselves as a Latin American company. And I think today, to accomplish what we want to accomplish, it's impossible with our traditional way of thinking, which is everything is invented at the headquarters or in Chile and then gradually gets implemented in the rest of the region. So the challenge is, how do we break that mold and start leveraging the whole region as a starting point for the different initiatives. One of the things we've done over the last years is that leadership no longer has to be in Chile. So if you look at my team of direct reports, one of them lives in Peru, one lives in Argentina, one lives in Colombia, one lives in India, as you said, and that portrays the message that we are no longer, centered in one country and expanding whatever works there to the rest of the region, but actually allowing all of the countries to have, an impact, which doesn't mean that everybody has their own individual initiatives, but it means that initiatives can come from everywhere, but then have to be initiatives that are shared as a region. I think another example that you touched on is as we embarked in this transformation, obviously, and I think all of us encounter that as we do that, the main bottleneck is talent, right? And we found that no matter what we did, getting all the talent to do all of these initiatives in parallel was very hard. And that's when we decided to go to India and set up a software development or a customer solutions development center. And the challenge there is, how do you connect people that are so many time zones away? Culturally, you could say they are also at a distance. How do you connect those people with the customer reality? And that's a very big challenge, which I think we are also working through, but it has allowed us, today we have close to 400 people as developers in India, complementing the development center we have in Argentina, in Chile, and in Mexico. And we are, I think, really learning to work in this distributed manner in a very collaborative way by having all of these people who are mostly developers work very closely with business people and not having this divide between business people who are looking for solutions and developers developing solutions for business leaders, but rather having teams that are a mixture of both and where both have the same accountability. So traditionally what we had is the business people are, for example, responsible for opening cards or for selling product, and the technology people are responsible for milestones in delivering a solution. Well, we have to break that mold and say, well, these two people together have to have an objective of changing the conversion rate at the site, or selling, getting more traffic, or getting a better time to market of a product. Once you do that, these two people are no longer just playing ping pong with each other, but they're working as a team towards a common goal. And I think that was a big learning and something that we are still working on to make our model work.
That's so interesting. Somehow the two topics that we touched were somehow thinking about new ways of doing things from the internal perspective, probably driven by what the customers are expecting in terms of the way to be served, and also what competitors are doing in the attackers. But now going into the investors community or other stakeholders, this wave that shocked us to us on ESG, this umbrella of the expectations of having a more cohesive and more systemic view on the goals for the company, it might impact in so many dimensions of your business. How are you dealing within the strategy and the organization in addressing these expectations that are increasing day by day?
So ESG, which was social responsibility,
initially
or only very few years ago.
Yeah.
And when we heard social responsibility, it meant, well, we have to take care of the community in which we operate, which is very important. And of course, you have community initiatives, and we look at the impact we have in the community. And as a result of that, our ESG is traditionally very focused with each of our businesses, either focusing on financial education or our program Haciendo Escuela, which sponsors schools across the region. But the trend, as you said, and the perspective has shifted substantially to the E, right? And also not only to how you take care of the community, but also how you take care of your own people within the organization. And in both of those, we have, I think, big challenges. I think all companies have big challenges in climate impact. We are in a process of measuring that is very hard, because measuring impact in financial services, measuring impact in a mall, measuring impact in a department store that has own labels, so we are producers of, for example, apparel, means that you have to go all the way from factories in China to transportation, ocean transportation, to the operation of the stores and the packaging, to the delivery to people's homes. And then also, very importantly, what happens with those products when people use them. So the value chain is very, very complex and long. And I think we are in a very, very committed to first measure and second mitigate. And within that, the impact of the customer and connecting with the customer on this, we think, is extremely important. So initiatives like recycling clothes, which is something we are doing more and more actively, or having a lot of information on the product, the nature of the product, the impact it has, from production to reaching the customer, but then after the customer consumes it, what is the impact this product has on the environment, and then therefore becoming an ally of the customer in mitigating impact. So that's where we are in the E portion of ESG. And then on the S portion, I think the focus has shifted somewhat from impact on the community, as I said, to how your own team is being treated. And I think their diversity and inclusion are probably the most important challenges. I think in Latin America, we have probably a historical debt, both with women and with all different types of diversity in companies. And we're working very hard on that. We already set up a goal of increasing the proportion of women that make part of our top 2,000 leaders in the company. We reached a level of, we had set a target by 2024 of being at 40%. We reached a level of 38%, so we're quite confident we're going to get there. So now we have to set a new target. But then the second challenge is not only how you get women in the top 2,000, how do you get women in the top 10, in the top 20 of the company, where we have a bigger challenge, and that is not something that can happen from one day to another in hiring. You have to actually create the conditions for that to happen. And we have many different initiatives around that, around mentoring, around flexibility. But I think the most important is, as they said, walking the talk in how you make decisions, how the organization in the day-to-day is actually making decisions. So we have, in the last year alone, made 2 decisions of actually designating or naming women, or nominating women, not only nominating, but confirming women in roles of leadership in the middle of their pregnancy. So before they go out for 6 months, you already know you're going to be in a position, and somebody's, somehow we're going to solve the problem of them being away. But I think it gives the message to the whole organization that you actually have all of these opportunities, regardless of, in this case, whether you're a man or a woman, but also we have to do the same for other types of diversity, right?
That's amazing. That would lead me to another topic that really has emerged with a lot of aspirations, challenges, the future of work, the model of work of the future that really started with this concept of being hybrid models and working from home and at the office, but that goes beyond that. What's the initiatives or experience that you have been facing with the objective of somehow now still attracting the talent that you need, but also retaining in terms of their own expectations or what they are looking at their jobs?
Yeah, so I think, of course, there is the work-life balance that you have to provide, and that, the pandemic, I think, has taught us that we can be quite productive and at the same time be close to our loved ones, and therefore a lot of people want to keep that balance. So we have a challenge of how do we keep that going once the office opens up, but at the same time generate those interactions that don't happen in Zoom, that we also value a lot. So that trade-off, I think, is one that we're going to have to struggle with, and we will no longer be able to do that without giving people a reason to go to work. But beyond that, I think people also are very excited about going to work because of the impact they're having, because of the exposure they're having to what's happening in the world, and in particular in the business they operate. And we think, I particularly think that the interaction with entrepreneurship is something that people get very excited about. And we have created 3 ways to provide that for our teams. So about 2 years ago, we created 3 ways in which we interact with the entrepreneurial communities in the countries in which we operate. One is Falabella Ventures, which basically is a fund. So that's a very simple way of, creating an opportunity for a team of people to examine companies that can be very close to what we are doing. So we just in the last year and a half, we made 4 investments in last mile companies, in a payments company that is part of our core payments solution. And therefore, the interaction with those companies is something that is very rich for our teams. A second initiative is an initiative we call Link, which is not about investing in the companies, but is about having different areas like AI or our search engine, which is, needs to be nurtured from the outside. The way we provide a visual representation of the products we sell, the routing of our orders. So there are many aspects of what we are providing to the customers that require work with many times very small companies that are creating and experimenting with these solutions. We cannot create all of this internally. So Link is a way of connecting with many different companies that are enhancing these solutions. And then a third one that is probably the most difficult to accomplish for us, but also one that has been very productive, is really building an alliance with a startup. So actually more than 6 years ago, we built an alliance with Technisys when they were in their initial stages. Now they're what they call a unicorn.
Yeah.
But it was a great collaborative work in which we provided challenges that they worked on and then turned into products they took to market. So it was very good for us because it accelerated our development. It was very good for them because they could take proven products to market. Of course, now we said, we should have developed those products ourselves and taken them to market ourselves. But in hindsight, it was very, very good for Falabella to enter that alliance, and we continue to work together with them. And the same is happening with an authentication company in Argentina that, when we were looking for authentication for our customers, there are many global players. We found a company that had a very good solution and unknown, and we were scaling that within Falavela, and that's also giving scalability to their own products. So those are 3 ways in which our teams are interacting with entrepreneurship and with the, I would call it the entrepreneurial community of Latin America, and I think it enhances the experience of the team substantially.
It is amazing how all these changes are producing sort of impact within the organization with your customers. How are you seeing that the market is recognizing many of these changes in terms of how the market is seeing the value of Falabella, and many of these initiatives that would take some time to produce the changes are interpreting and valuing the results of those that are emerging?
Well, I think we are grossly undervalued. So
You all say that.
in the sense that many of these are long-term commitments, and they're not going to bring the quarterly results or the immediate results from one day to another. Of course, we hope they do, and we are pushing for it, and we are trying to bring solutions to customers as soon or as fast as we can. But when you really commit to developing platforms, it means you are willing not to take shortcuts and not to build what they call technical debt in doing that, and just bringing something to the customer that then when you try to scale it, it doesn't work. And when you try to connect the loyalty program to the financial services, it's impossible because each took a different route. So this is also a commitment of thinking about it in a with a longer term perspective and patience. And when the results are not coming as fast as you would like them to come, doubling up on that commitment. And I think that's what we are doing. We are really doubling up on the commitment, regardless of how the market
somebody might,
when the market recognizes.
That's right, because somebody might argue if this might be the sin of being an incumbent, because many people would say how many of the incumbents that are really transforming themselves are being recognized appropriately on those changes. And somebody would say of the new attackers and the startups that are over-recognized on the expectations they're creating. So it's a bit of a paradox on how the market might be recognizing the new companies that are leading the way, but also not necessarily in the full scope the incumbents. So that's an interesting perspective. Somehow you have few bosses, but one would be the board. So we talk about the shareholders and the market. How the board has been sort of both supporting you or going with you in many of these changes that are fundamentals. And if you see that there is also learnings for the boards on how they have been adapting to all these changes.
Yeah, so I think it's the board is, and all boards, I think, that are undergoing transformation processes are taking a great leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
We are proposing very bold changes to the way of working, and I think the board is being extremely supportive of, what we are trying to do as a management team, and the complexity of change. I think in terms of learnings, I think the more important one I would take out from this process we are going through is not to think about ourselves as an incumbent. And I think more and more, not only the management team, but also the board is not thinking of ourselves as an incumbent, because as you think about the businesses I described, we are in most of them not an incumbent. So it means we need to think of them or of ourselves as really someone that needs to be shaping the market in those different initiatives. And I think that's the biggest learning in terms of when you think of yourself as an incumbent, you focus more on what took you here, and you focus more on what were the factors of success and how do we make sure we protect those factors of success, versus when you think of yourself as an attacker, as a disruptor, you have to really have more of a learner attitude and really question yourself whether what took you here is what is going to take you there, and what are the factors of success of the future, regardless of what the factors of success of the past were.
That's interesting. But that will lead me to the final question on the real bosses, that may be your family. In a sense, how you think, despite of really spreading all these learnings within the organization, within the ecosystems of the companies that would work with you, within the board and the capital markets, any learnings that you have sort of achieved that you think has also illuminated your way on how you live with your family and your kids that are, in some of the cases, learning to do this?
So throughout the pandemic, I think we all suffered many different things, and we as a company had a lot of, initiatives to take care of how all of the teams, particularly in stores, which were the most exposed teams, dealt with the pandemic, with serving customers, and there was a lot of, I'd say, uncertainty throughout the pandemic, and we all, I think, suffered through that. But if I could single out a silver lining of the pandemic, is that a lot of us got to spend much more time with our loved ones, our wives, our kids. And I think I took away a lot from that experience, from the idle time we had to spend together. And one thing I learned is by watching my children. I have children of, they are in the early stages of youth, so 21, 18, 15. And I really rediscovered many things that made me think about our customers, because my children adapted in a way that was incredible to me. They really, me and my wife had a rhythm of adaptation, and they had a completely different rhythm of adaptation, which made me think about our customers and the rhythm of adaptation they have, and therefore what we need to do. And I realized that the expectations on the other side of the table are not proportional to the expectations we have on ourselves many times as leaders. And therefore, we need to be probably 100 times more flexible than we usually are. And I think that's the one thing I learned from watching how my children made instant decisions about how to best survive the pandemic.
Thank you, Gaston. It has been very sort of amazing to know these stories and to see how a traditional company that believes it's not an incumbent anymore, that it's really shaping new ways of doing business, has been evolving and succeeding. So thank you so much for sharing those with us.
Thank you again, Jorge, for the invitation.
Thank you.